Unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with your hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Here we focus on helping men and those with men in their lives solve some of life's complex challenges through understanding the practices of mindfulness and how they can help. Each episode is in an environment free of judgment and criticism, with a focus on authenticity and inner peace. Let's dig in.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Listen up. If the heart is not connected to the soul and feels no union to source of being, then there is no unity consciousness in the heart, and there cannot be unity consciousness in the mind. The heart then feels separated or disconnected or alone, and then the mind can only operate from its natural dominance of separation, which can swiftly lead to individualism and selfishness. Stated differently, without heart consciousness or activation of the heart level, the mind can only operate from the perspective of separation. That's a quote from my friend and author Dan St. Pierre, and the book is All One, the United Anatomy of Consciousness. And we welcome you all back to Men Talking Mindfulness. I'm Will Schneider, joined by my brilliant co-host over there in Colorado Springs, John McCaskill. Today we're going to break down heartfulness, demystify it, and learn how it can help us and help you have a happier and more successful life at home and at work. Hey, if you're one of those guys out there that are already thinking, oh my God, we're going to talk about feelings, right? Then I challenge you to keep listening. We will not waste your time. There's a lot to learn here, and some of this knowledge can change the course of your life and your relationships. But John, it's great to be back, have another episode. I'm excited to bring my friend Dan St. Pierre on in a moment. But how are you? And I think you have some announcement for us, yeah?
Yeah, man, I'm doing well. Excited to have this conversation. And, if you'd talked to me about 6 or 7 years ago and said that I would be having a conversation on a show called Men Talking Mindfulness about a topic called heartfulness, I would have said, you're smoking something. But here we are. So I'm excited to get in this conversation. And for those who are wondering what it's going to be about, yes, hey, stay with us. Stay with us. Bear with us. You're going to learn something here, and it's important stuff that's going to change your life. So we're happy that you're here with us. As far as the announcements, yeah, we've got the retreat coming up. We've got the Movement RX and Men Talking Mindfulness Adventure Retreat, and it's just over a month out. So September 16th through the 19th, we're going to be in Durango, Colorado, at the Colorado Trails Ranch. And retreat is 3.5 days, but also have a follow-on virtual integration program, and all of it together is $2,499, $2,499. And if you are part of an organization or a group that books 4 or more, then you get $500 off per person. So we'd love to have you join us there in Durango at the Colorado Trails Ranch. And to learn more, head to mentalkingmindfulness.com/retreat, or you can listen to one of our recent episodes where we actually interviewed Teresa and we had a big conversation about what the retreat is going to include. So we're definitely excited to have that retreat going on and excited for you to join us. That all said, let's introduce our guest. I'm going to bring Dan up now. There he is.
Awesome. There he is. Hey, Dan, how you
doing?
feeling today? Good. How are you?
Good. I'm feeling wonderful. Happy to be here.
Yeah, likewise, man. I'm glad you're here. So this is what Dan is up to. Here's his little bio. Dan is a co-founder and CEO of Hyperlight Mountain Gear, which is the leader in ultralight backcountry gear. Under the design philosophy of essentialism, Hyperlight manufactures and sells backpacks, tents, and accessories that are used from the Appalachian Trail to Mount Everest and about anywhere in between. But Dan was not always in this industry. He graduated from Penn's Wharton School of Business and spent his 20s working in corporate finance in New York City and in Boston. Slowly disheartened by a corporate existence and hearing the faint calling for adventure, Dan then spent his 30s working seasonally as a waiter, traveling, studying spirituality and writing. He spent over a year in India practicing yoga, meditation, and heartfulness, and has written a few million words in the pursuit of spiritual understanding and expanded consciousness. And then He then spent his 40s starting and building both Hyperlight mountain gear and a family, while continuing to refine his spiritual practice and understanding. He recently finished a book that I just mentioned earlier, All One: The United Anatomy of Being, which, for full disclosure, is not yet published, but it will be, Dan. And on a personal note, like Dan and I have known each other, I think probably since we're 13, 14, 15. We kind of went through high school together and became really like excellent, wonderful friends. Probably as soon as we took our paths as seekers, Dan, all of a sudden we started talking about light and consciousness and meditation and all the woo-woo stuff that originally turned John off, right? and now John is hooked. So well, hey, welcome everybody. Hey, Dan.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's really important work, and again, happy and very grateful to be joining you.
Thanks, Dan.
Well,
thanks.
Cool. Go ahead, John. You have something to say?
Yeah. So well, let's if you've never listened to our show, never watched our show before, and you're here for the first time, we bookend the kind of meat and potatoes of the show with a practice, a grounding practice on the front end, and a grounding practice at the back end. So I'm going to kick it off with this grounding practice for today. So for that, go ahead and get into a position that's comfortable for you. I like to sit up straight in my chair, and I put my hands on my lap, and then kind of straighten my back, but not stiff. And then I personally like to close my eyes, but if closing your eyes is not comfortable for you, or if you're in a situation where it's not safe for you to close your eyes, just go ahead and soften your gaze. Let's bring our attention intentionally to our breath, to your breath, focusing on the physical sensation of your inhalation and your exhalation. Noticing how each of your breaths affects your body, your mind, and your nervous system. How each part of your breath affects your body, your mind, and your nervous system. And being that today's episode is on heartfulness, let's tie into what it is we are feeling in our heart. What it is you are feeling in your heart. And being open to whatever that may be. Not feeling a sense of grasping or reaching or repulsion. Just sitting with whatever that may be. And if you find that your mind wandered off to some other place, some other space, some other time, just gently bring yourself back and notice the feeling or feelings in your heart. And we'll conclude together with two deep cleansing breaths. Begin by breathing out as much air as you can, bringing your navel to your spine. Deep breath in, filling your lungs all the way. Holding full, noticing that fullness, and releasing, releasing, releasing. Holding empty at the bottom. Noticing that emptiness, being okay with it. Deep breath in. Filling those lungs all the way. Holding at the top. Noticing the tension. And release, release, release. And as you release, start to bring some movement back into your body. Maybe moving your head around, loosening your shoulders. And then if your eyes were closed, go ahead and blink them open. And here we are, ready to go. All right. Will, back over to you, brother.
Awesome. Hey, well, Dan, I really enjoyed reading your book, and I love how easily you explain like some very big concepts about the mind, the soul, the connection, the mind, the whole that you also talk about, and that unity consciousness and separating consciousness. And yeah, so thank you for this contribution to the work that we've been talking about for a very, very long time. And here we are having a conversation about like, like literally Dan and I've been talking about this for so long. And I remember, so let's, well, how about you tell us a little bit more about your journey from like Wharton School of Business to waiting tables to traveling through India to finding Hyperlight and, and being a dad and being a husband.
Yeah, sure. I feel like I grew up with, as a happy kid. I had a great childhood, loving parents, good student, good athlete, but had zero consciousness. Maybe lucky to feel blissful, or maybe it was blissful ignorance.
Yeah, right.
So, I think just like to please people, doing what was expected of me. So, went to a good business school. The natural trajectory was just to go to New York City, and I think most of my classmates, at least who studied finance, were into corporate finance and investment bankers and venture capitalists, etc. But after several years, that I was finding that wasn't what I wanted to really do, or where my heart was.
Mm-hmm.
I saw some, I think, negative things in the corporate world. Possibly, I think I could describe it as immoral moves for profit, or for hitting Wall Street expectations, etc. And I just didn't feel like it was what I wanted to be doing for the rest of my life. And I think my foray into heartfulness was not noticeable to me right away. It was just kind of sort of happening. And when I say heartfulness, I'm talking about listening to your heart and following your intuition. So when I was about 27, I had a younger brother that came to live with me, and he introduced me to marijuana. And like I said, I think coming to it really late in life, but it started to change the way I was thinking. And when I described earlier that I think I lacked any awareness or consciousness, it was starting to open up my mind. And I felt like I was able to take a risk. And I left the corporate world for the first time. And my brother and I went out to Boulder, Colorado, and we tried to start a band. And we thought we were following a dream, and we had a good time, but it wasn't the dream. But really importantly, I learned that you can follow a dream, and if you don't succeed, it's not the end of the world. And maybe if it's not even the right dream, it's not the end of the world. You have tried, you have taken a risk, and then of course with the background, family is like, get back to work.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Go get a job. So I got back into business and worked for a high-tech startup in Boston for a while, and I found myself in the same trap.
What was the trap? If you can, maybe describe a little bit more, because there might be some people out there that kind of feel they are trapped. So what was that? What was that tension you might have been experiencing?
I think it's earning a good living, doing what you're supposed to do, doing what the construct of society, media, family, church, whatever it may be, expects of you. So, I think I found myself not being me, which was really important. And around that time, or when I was in Boston, I happened to pick up a book called The Razor's Edge by Somerset Maugham. And have either of you guys familiar with that book?
No, I'm not. No. The
Oh, it's
Razor's Edge. Yeah.
There's been some movies. So actually, I think 3 movies that have been made of it, and one was with Bill Murray.
Oh, wow.
Bill Murray in more of a serious role, but great book about a guy. I mean, I really related to the main character. The main character. This all occurs around the Roaring '20s, and a guy with a blessed life, and he ends up going into World War I and comes out, depressed and not understanding what's going on in the world, and instead of earning millions in Chicago as a trader, and then during the Roaring '20s, he decides to head to Europe and he becomes a seeker, and he starts exploring, and he ends up in India, and this planted a seed in me, I think, and it's something that was, I think, in my heart for a couple of years. As I said, I started waiting tables.
Yeah.
And wanted to afford myself the time in winters to start studying and seeking and reading. It's my first time in my life I was reading for pleasure and reading literature and reading anything I could get my hands on. But after a couple of years, I had the courage to buy a ticket to India and took my first trip to India. And talk about a land of the heart. The Western world is the land of the mind, and I can't think. I haven't been all over the world. I've been to a lot of places. I can't think of a place in the world that's as different than the United States as India. And you're forced pretty quick to start listening to your heart, living from intention. I'm sorry, intuition, and it was a great experience. And anyway, I kept on this path for really 10 years, confused, seeking. I think the path is filled with, there's a lot of work involved in it, and it comes with a lot of confusion until you can start to put the pieces together of spirituality. But anyway, I wanted to have a family. My brother had an idea for a business. He didn't have any experience in business, and we hooked up together. This was a good opportunity for me to do something that was a little more me, not so corporate, but entrepreneurial, and essentially has afforded me to start a family, and that's where I am now. All along the way, continuing to further my spiritual practice and gain an understanding and expanding consciousness.
Beautiful.
How is you brought up? Oh, John, you got a question? Go ahead.
Oh no, well, yeah, I do. I was just saying that's beautiful that you've been able to do that, and especially when you mentioned kind of your childhood and going into college and going to the business school and then going through what society had expected of you. I've been there and done that myself. Like I went to high school. I was a good athlete. I enlisted in the Navy, went to college after that. And then the next block was, well, you're supposed to get married and then you're supposed to have children. And, my first marriage in all honesty was probably not, I wasn't mature enough in heart and mind to be married. I wasn't in the place to be married, but that's what society expected of me. And I know that a lot of our listeners a lot of the preponderance of those who actually watch the show are on LinkedIn, and that is a place where there's a lot of expectations to do something professionally, right? Well, hey, that profession might be going into venture capital, that profession might be going into commercial real estate, the profession might be whatever it may be, but there's societal expectations, and it's great to see and hear that you are able to break away from that using your heart and using your curiosity, if you will, to be a seeker. And I want to kind of peel back the onion on that term. You've used it, Will's used it. For those who are listening, that might be kind of a woo-woo term. What exactly is a seeker? And well, yeah, I guess that's my question. What exactly is a seeker, and can you expound on that?
Yeah, I think a seeker is, it's a term that's, it's a term that's used quite often, I think, in
the seeker space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, in spirituality and in consciousness and in mindfulness. And I view the term seeker as being somebody who's looking for the truth, looking for answers, looking for understanding beyond what we are taught and fed, again, through the constructs of our societies and our cultures. And because I don't think the path to expanded consciousness is taught by, certainly not taught in school. It's not, my experiences of religion or growing up in, a Catholic, Christian, well, being introduced to that, you're not taught that. And so you have to go out and find it on your own, I think, or at least get turned on to it on your own, some curiosity to learn more, to understand the truth, and that sets you on this path.
Yeah. And it's a nonstop journey process. Like, you find one truth and then it leads you to another and then to another. And it's like, I don't know, I gotta say, it's been an incredibly rewarding experience. Like, very rewarding.
Absolutely.
Like, when you really begin to access and, the technology of the heart, and then just everything, a lot of things just start to open up within you and then outside of you, and things you never thought were possible, conspiring to kind of help you to understand more of the whole, if you will, like how we're all so intimately connected, how to like achieve that connection, experiences of that connection. And it's almost like a drug in its own way, and
well, it's better than any drug.
Yeah.
and the benefits are rewarding. I mean, you just mentioned something that made me think of, I talk a lot about in this manuscript, in this book that I've written and working on getting published, is our levels of being. And I think it's extremely important to understand. So I think we all understand we exist on a physical level. We have our physical perceptual tools of touch, sight, sound, hearing, smell. But we also exist on an energetic level. And I think that there are two of the most fundamental characterizations or categories of energy, which is separating energy and uniting energy. And then we exist on a non-physical level. And I know not everybody believes that, or generally it is something to be believed and disbelieved, and not everybody understands it's something that can be experienced. But the body is the physical, where we have action, with the potential for action. The mind is the perceptual tool. It's an energetic level and the perceptual tool of the physical realm. It is, I think, dominated by separation. We have a dualistic mind. We need to differentiate really anything and everything in order to understand. And then we have the other part of our energetic level of being is the heart, and the heart is feeling. it is the language of the non-physical, or the soul, if you will. Uh, and it's, I think, dominant feeling is union. And then we have this um, non-physical level of our being, which is just being, or isness. And it is the indescribable, permanent um, level of our being. But you just mentioned something about the heart, which reminded me. But I think a big benefit of understanding these levels of being and how they operate, but particularly the heart, which, especially for men, is a place we don't always go, or it takes time in life to get there. But the heart knows all the what's, and I should say knows with the quotations, because you don't know it in your heart, it's a feeling. But the heart knows all the what's. It's the mind that figures out the hows. So when we do listen to our hearts, and intuition and feeling, um, you know what's right for you, and you know what you need to be doing. And I think you just mentioned something about alignment, and which, I'm sorry, brought me to this tangent.
No, not a tangent at all. It's that's exactly what we're here to talk about. Okay, I'm checking my mic. Well, well, tell us some more about that. Separating, uniting, energies. Like you talk about a bunch in the book, and how that relates to our, to the mind and to the heart. And so I think that'd be important, because, I think that duality of things, and the opposition in which the physical world manifests itself, it can be, if you haven't been a seeker, you haven't been asking these questions, haven't been, doing this work, help us understand that a little bit.
Sure. I think there's a few ways to come at it. I'm going to start with an arcing trajectory. So there's a couple of ways to look at this too. I mean, if we look at the physical world, we see circles or arcs everywhere. The way the sun rises, how we experience the seasons, the way celestial bodies move through the sky, the way a plant rises up and falls at the end of the season. So we can also think about our lives, or really the life of any being is, nothing exists forever. There's a beginning and a middle and an end. And it is always this rising motion to, you're rising up through the spring and summer of your life. You get to this apex, and there's nothing we can do about it, but we must now descend. And that rising is the separating energy to the apex. And once you hit that apex, you're descending, you're falling down. It's a returning, or uniting or reuniting energy. And you can look at this from scientific perspectives as well, where gravity, or if we look at the Big Bang is what we most know about the start of our universe, started with a huge separating event. So in this physical level, in this physical journey, there has to be a separation at the beginning, and we rise up, then we fall. I don't know if that makes sense, but
what are we separating from? Maybe is kind of a good thing, maybe to talk about here.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
sure.
Yeah. What are we reuniting with, or uniting to?
Well, you're always separating from a source of being. So if you think about a plant rising up in the spring, it is separating from a seed, and it is separating from the ground, and it ultimately returns back to the ground. What we are separating from, and this is, again, for many people, something to believe or disbelieve until you've had a direct experience with being, or this source of being, that is what we were separating from. We were separating from the non-physical into the physical.
And we're returning. on the other side of that, right? And that's so
Yes.
basically that's the arc, if you will, kind of the circle in the arc. The old the Lion King, it's the circle of life, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this non-physical, I mean, this is traditionally called God, right? Um, it's the soul, it's the spirit, it's what is referred to in I'd say non-religious practices as pure being and the pure consciousness of being.
It's the non-physical, which it's like that's that duality. It's like I think that's I know as a man growing up as like in a pretty traditional family like yourself, Dan. It was we were asked, went to church, and I never was able to really experience God, if you will. I just didn't have a great priest or something like that. But we were always heavily about the physical, about how I can do things physically, about what kind of income we're bringing into the house, what kind of things that we've had, and what are we doing with these things, where are we going on trips, and it's just like this constant, nonstop, like physical experience, and and I was just brought up that way, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of people have that experience, and then for me, where kind of the shifting into like the heart of things, right, which is that unity and that uniting energy, right, which you kind of referred to earlier. For me, I had my heart broken, and first time I really experienced the heart, really experienced like the energy of love and the unity with somebody else, and that just brought kind of a greater unity of who I am and how I am fit into this world. And then all that went away, all that uniting energy, and then I'm separated again. And it's just like my heart opened wide open. And that's like, I was just looking for answers, because I think like I found in that heart space, in that uniting energy, from that really being opened in a very, very heartful way. And I found truth, like you talked about earlier. There's like, we're hardwired, from my experience, like with truth within us. That's like, comes from the source, comes from the soul. It's in our DNA. And I just kept trying to seek more of that truth, because there's something about when my heart did break. Everything else that I thought was supposed to be part of my physical existence no longer made any sense to me. Nothing.
Right.
Absolutely nothing made sense. And I call it like literally like a shattering. Like my whole model of physical existence, I guess you'd say, shattered. And then I start everything up until this podcast right now has been trying to move through the heart and live with the heart and answer the questions from the heart, and then find continually deeper ways to unify with myself, unify with everybody else, unify with John, unify with our audience. Like everywhere I go, it's like, how can I connect? So,
Sure.
So what is like the, you can comment on that, but also like to get into like, what is the essence of this heartfulness? Like what is, why, and how can it kind of help us to just be better people in this world and have a more thriving and happier existence?
Yeah, no, definitely. Good question. I mean, I think it's important to say that, and all of these, what some of these topics I've talked about already are demonstrated and described in this manuscript that I'm working on, because I really don't want anything I don't want it to be a starting point of something that needs to believe to move through consciousness or understand any expanded consciousness. So it's demonstrated. Unfortunately, we don't have time to do go through those demonstrations and better or more clearly describe this process. But ultimately, this being, this isness, this non-physical that is the source of all being, regardless of what you call it, informs and directs the heart through feeling and the heart level. And the heart level informs and directs the mind and thought. And then it is the mind and thought that informs and directs the physical or our action. So this is not news. This is nothing new. think we all, well, maybe not all, but a lot of us understand that, everything starts from feeling. All of our actions come from feeling first and then a thought. So why is this important? If we want to be happy and we want to be doing what's right for us, and we want to have joyous moments, and we want to be kind and have a better world, it kind of all starts from what I call the two most fundamental heart level feelings. And that is either connection to, or I should say, a feeling of connection to or a disconnection from this source of being. Uh, connection or unity is love. And disconnection or separation, well, that manifests itself as fear. And when we understand that we are connected to and really are one with the source of being, there's nothing to ever fear in life. There is only love that shows up. And you're willing to follow your heart, to do what's right, because there's no fear of there's no fear of taking that risk. There's no fear of going against, what we've already talked about, what is maybe expected of you. And then you have united thoughts, and you have empathy, and you have kindness and gratitude. And then, of course, your actions all show up in the same way.
Yeah. I experience it in the sense of like, well, why would anyone want to hurt me? Like, why, I feel so supported when I kind of, I mean, I do try hard to kind of live as heartfully as I can typically. And that, that comes through kindness. I'm really always try to be kind to people and take care of people if they need it. And, and also it's like, why would anyone want to, hurt me? Why does anyone want to like tear me down? And just kind of, maybe it's like a little bit ignorant in some ways. I mean, I definitely am vigilant of like those kind of things and that energy of people like coming that are like kind of grifters and trying to like manipulate you in some way. But like, even in those situations, like I still can see, the heart in other people. I think that's been a big kind of win for me, is knowing that at our essence, at our core, we're all good people. We're all kind. We all are seeking the same things, that love, connection, and belonging. And if I can give a little moment of that love and connection, belonging to, whether it's a perfect stranger or a guy at the bodega or, someone that I'm teaching or a class of students or something like that, it's like, and it's amazing how that there's like, it just connects on such a deep level in the other people or the entire class that, you could really create an huge environment and a huge a place of that connection, that love, and that belonging. And just because, our hearts, like they've been studying it with heart math, how our hearts connect to one another, even though we're not conscious of it. And it's like, it's challenging in some ways to talk about, because it's difficult to measure at this point. And like you said earlier, the India and the East is so much about the heart, and we're like the land of the mind. And, without physical evidence and data and this kind of stuff and, multiple blind studies or whatever, then we just don't believe it. Until you have a circumstance like, all of us did, where, life was just upside down and nothing was making sense from this physical and mental and, mind realm. And then we went deeper. That's when we started meditating. That's when we started breathing. That's when we started, going on these like vision quests, if you will, to kind of seek more of the whole, seek more of the truth. That's right there. You just got to kind of peel away the veneer of the mind, and boom, there's truth just behind it. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The mind is so complex. The heart level is really not that complex.
Why is that? Like, talk about that a little bit.
Well, if we look at the physical world, I mean, there really is, at least compared to the capacity of our minds and ability to understand, there's an infinite amount of things out there in this physical world. And it's as you explore the physical world with our perceptual tools of mind, it's like going up a funnel, and it's really never ending. The heart being the language of the soul, or what I call this non-physical, is like going down a funnel. Um, and there's only really one destination. So I think maybe I'll just say something a little different. I talked about, this physical and non-physical level and our perceptual tools of the mind and the heart. So we can look at like characteristics of the physical world. So one is that it is physical. Uh, it is impermanent and constantly moving. So everything is in a constant state of motion. Nothing is ever in the same place twice. And even something that seems still is made up of, molecules and atoms, which are constantly moving. So everything is constantly moving. I mean, even us sitting on the Earth right now, we're traveling around the sun at 70,000 miles per hour, and the sun is traveling around the Milky Way at 500,000 miles an hour. And with all of these seemingly, infinite amount of things in the physical world, we can say that a characteristic of the physical world is that it is separated. Right? Now, we look at the mind as really dominated in duality or separation. I touched upon this briefly, but in order to understand anything in the world or anything in this physical world, we have to differentiate it, just to gain understanding. So there's, big and small and black and white and here and there. And this really is the basis for all of language, is trying to make sense and understand this physical world. And with that duality and with that differentiation, there's become a perception of opposites. And we can use that functionality of the mind, which is real and a truth, and then we can say, well, if we understand that the physical world is separated, physical, and impermanent or constantly moving, then what is its opposite? And its opposite then would be the non-physical, permanent, unchanging, and fully united. And that is why the heart is the language of the soul, and higher in the hierarchy of our levels of being than thought, is really quite simple. You either feel connected to this united, fully united, permanent, unchanging, non-physical level of being, or you don't. And you can believe in it through religion or God, but belief always leads to the potential of doubt, and belief does not get you to the direct experience of it. You can't think your way to experience of this source of being, this non-physical pure being, or what we historically refer to as God. And I mean, it is God, but I sometimes hesitate to use that word because of the traditional and historical understanding or connotations. But you cannot think your way to it. You can only feel it. And this is why, like you mentioned before, it can't be proven. We can't, science can't prove it. It's a personal journey. It's a personal experience. And once you experience it, as I've said before, your heart is activated. You can only operate from union, and you think more united with kindness, you have empathy for other people. You understand that anything with being has the same being. And this is what will lead to this increased consciousness and understanding is what will lead to greater happiness, a better world, and
Mm.
more peace.
How do we practice this? Like how do we kind of get down into this stillness, into this source, into everything that you're talking about? It's like it's yeah, what are the pathways in to kind of like, if somebody out there, I guess this is a good way to put it, if somebody's out there that hasn't really been scared of their feelings, or haven't really had a good connection to their heart, in this sense of feeling a deeper connection, a deeper meaning to life than just, the physical and, the manipulation that continually seems to take place throughout our world through the marketing and the media and, and everyone around you trying to buy their shit. How do we go into that place? Like, is it practice? Is it, do you have to go to India? Do you have to wait tables like you did, Dan, years ago, in order
Oh
to
yes, you have to
appreciate?
wait tables. That's
Oh, okay.
okay.
Yeah, I did too. I did too. So,
No, well, first of all, you guys know this. This is what your show is about. And it's what you're
yeah.
talking about all the time, and it's the journey you're on. And there are various methods, and when I think about the methods or the practices, I immediately go back to our levels of being. So on the physical level, we can practice acts of kindness. Um,
Mm,
we, if you practice yoga, there are asanas to open your heart.
mm,
Uh, on the mind level, we um, we try to have empathy, and be grateful, or study spirituality. There's so much information out there, and there has been for thousands of years.
mm,
On the heart level, again, I think it's feeling gratitude, uh,
mm.
feeling feeling empathy, um, being nice, trying to be happy,
Yeah,
which
practicing
ultimately
kindness. Yeah. Sorry, Dan.
kindness, love, care,
Mm,
tolerance. But this all comes so naturally when you go one step further, and I know you guys have done this, and it's meditation.
yeah.
So in meditation, you still the mind. That is the requirement of meditation, because we have this dualistic mind. And what we're trying to get to in meditation is the singularity of
Mm,
this permanent, unchanging, fully united being. Um, so I, I guess I'd like to talk maybe just briefly about Vipassana meditation. There are so many meditations out there. I have tried quite a few of them. There's some that I haven't, that I maybe would have liked to have tried, especially in India. But Vipassana, which I'm bringing up because I know you've done it, Will, and I think you guys did a show on it.
mm,
Um, Vipassana is both guided and immersive, which means you don't have to sit for hours or days or months or years, like focusing on the tip of your nose without anybody guiding you or you know helping you to even know what you're doing. Vipassana is again guided and immersive. So it's a 10-day course, 100-hour meditation, silent for 10 days. And um, well, first of all, it's extremely powerful, but ultimately, meditation is about getting out of the mind and getting out of the duality. So you must focus on one thing until the subject, you, becomes one with the object. I
mm.
think that object can be anything. It can be the tip of your nose. It can be your breath. It can be apples. uh, it does not matter. It's about focusing so intently on one thing, that your mind and the duality of the mind quiets and stills, and you start experiencing oneness.
Hmm.
In Vipassana, it feels a little more active as well, which I think is so helpful. And the one thing you are focusing on is your energy and the energy within your body. And you can get to that feeling of oneness, and you can get to the feeling of understanding that we are not just physical beings, we are energetic beings. And as you continue, you can understand that we are all one, and we are all the non-physical source of being that is pure being.
Yeah, it's
I want to
Vipassana
touch on that
yeah, go ahead,
a
John.
little bit, Will. So,
No.
we talked about oneness, we've talked about duality, we've talked about connection, disconnection. And for our listeners, I want to just go one step further about why this is so important. I've got right here on the bottom of the screen a quote that you said earlier, Dan, in that connection is love, disconnection is fear. And I want to even expand on that fear portion. You said if you're connected, there's nothing to fear. But a lot of what it is we're experiencing that is considered negative emotions, negative feelings, sadness, anxiety, stress, fear of loss, is driven by fear. And this oneness, this connection for you as our audience, whether you're watching this or listening to it, this is why it's so important, is that some of those feelings that are really painful, it can keep you from experiencing those in a negative way. I think it's important to still experience those, still experience
Yes.
loss, still experience fear, still experience sadness, because there's the yin and yang in life. But it doesn't cause you fear of those experiences. And I just wanted more of a statement than a question there. But for our audience, I just wanted to kind of highlight why this oneness and the lack of duality is so important for you and for us.
I want to also add to that. I think one of the reasons that we do live with this scarcity mindset and in fear and all those negative things that kind of take us away from our oneness, our wholeness, our from our heart, is that we're not doing things that we really enjoy doing. When you start really enjoying life, whether it's if you're someone that has always wanted to take on some sort of art, like whether you want to dance or whether you want to start playing guitar or whether you want to start painting, that's another great way to start accessing and experiencing more of that heartfulness and kind of living with that oneness that is within the heart by connecting to something that's part of that truth that we've been talking about. It's like and that's where it can start. It's just like you just go out and start hiking on a regular basis and be in nature. Nature's full of that oneness. Nature's full of that heart energy, if you will. And it's always there. It's all of this is always there right in front of us. If we just kind of let go of the program, even if it's just for a half a day or a weekend, let go of the programming of like, oh, I need to be doing this and need to be doing that, and the expectations around this, and that's all just driven by and creating and driven by more anxiety and more stress, and and then it's FOMO and fear of missing out and all these things I just talked about is us divided from that source, from that heart, from that love, from the God that's within every single one of us, and the God that's out there just waiting to be just explored and discovered and kind of played with in some ways. And there's many different ways. I mean, meditation and Vipassana is a great way to get in and get to know your energetic self, get to know yourself on this deeper, kinder, loving, energetic level. But at the same time, meditation, you're going to see what's getting in the way of that singularity and that loving kindness and that source of peace that's within all of us. But meditation and Vipassana, that could just be something that maybe you need to go in another direction and taking that dance class or going hiking or all those other things that we've been mentioning here that can help open up that heart space. And then maybe meditation will come a little bit later. It's a process. But I think it's like, but you have to, what's the first, maybe what's the first foot on the path, right? That's a very common statement in the seeker kind of world that we're all loving right now. And Dan and I have been talking about for fucking ever. What's the first, foot on the path? What's the first thing that gets you on the path? Me was having my heart broken. Like, I just had no idea like that this kind of energy can exist within me, with somebody else, and within the planet. And then it wasn't there anymore. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, who am I? Like, everything, I questioned everything. But that was my first foot. And then but I needed guidance. So I picked up a book called Artist Way, which helped me to realize a lot of this programming that you kind of were relating to, John, and the stress and anxiety of that programming and living someone else's life instead of living my own. And then I started to realize like what's possible, and I think also another thing is like, creativity is kind of synonymous with that love, with that connection, with that uniting energy, because we're all like creative beings at our core as well. And you can either pick up the brush and start painting the life that you want, or you can just always wonder what it'd be like to be a painter of your own life, if you will. So it's a lot of
absolutely. You make some great points. I mean, it is a journey. Life is a journey. This experience is a journey. Change is very seldom a light switch. It's more of a dimmer. And in this manuscript, I spent quite a bit of time at the end talking about all of these methods, some of which you've just mentioned. Passionate and devoted action, like dancing or art, being in nature, and maybe it takes time to get to meditation. However, in my experience, meditation is the fastest way.
There you go. Yeah. Psychedelics too, in some ways. I gotta say, we did an episode last week on psychedelics. We talked about marijuana. It's not a psychedelic categorically, but it just starts to open you up. So maybe cannabis is somebody's on ramp out there, to kind of open up a little bit more,
well,
John.
I think the first step on the path is discontent. If we're happy and living a blissful life, then you don't want anything to change.
Right.
So there's no motivation. So discontent, which is something we all experience, and it depends on what you want to do with that discontent. If you want to try to fix it for permanently or for the long term, that tends to be the first step on the path. And then there are many ways to get there. It is a long journey. Often it takes a ton of reading, a ton of practice, some accidents and luck. But I don't think it needs to take 20 years, especially this day and age when information is so readily available. There's so many people doing great work, and I think it can all be accelerated if you have the curiosity and motivation to pursue unshakable bliss.
Yeah. And that discontent, it's also how we view discontent. People, that term in and of itself sounds negative, and people are uncomfortable with that term, and even more so with actually being in a state of discontent. When, as you've mentioned, as Will has mentioned, as I've mentioned in the past on past episodes, our discontent led us to where we are today, and where we're going to continue to seek more of that contentment through other ways, right? A lot of the time in today's day and age, if somebody feels that they are in a state of discontent, they're like, well, what do I need to fix that? Oh, well, I need a bigger house. I need more money. I need a better job. I need to have kids. I need to not have kids in the house. I need to be in another state, in any other state besides the one that I'm in, rather than saying, okay, well, let's sit with this state of discontent and explore it, and explore what else there is out there to bring me to a state of contentment. and not fix it with retail therapy or something else.
That's a great point.
Right.
Anyhow, that's again just more of a statement than a question there. But.
Yeah. In this light, I'd like to say that this is all coming for us as a species. When we think about the beginning, the middle, and the end, and this arcing journey that we are all on, and that we're on as a species, if you look at how Homo sapiens lived prior to the discovery of agriculture and a sedentary lifestyle, that is when we were living like any other being on this planet. It was really purely a physical state of consciousness, roaming to find food and find shelter, and that was it. And no possessions, only what you could carry on your back. And human nature and life changed incredibly when we started to become sedentary beings. And you can go through that whole evolutionary process, and it starts to become quite obvious that we've changed. But that was the point I think where we entered the mind level, and what I call like the summer of our existence. And we're getting pretty close, in my opinion, to the apex of our species. And if we're lucky enough to actually surpass that apex. But
well, you mentioned earlier, Dan, sorry,
so
that
much greater.
The apex is where is the end of kind of the separating energy, right?
That's
and
right.
then we're
Yeah.
going to slowly go into the fall and into the winter, which is the uniting energy. So it's coming, we're kind of differentiating, dissecting, dissolving, changing, dividing, hitting the very peak of the summer, the very top of the arc. And then we start to fall, just like the leaves fall off the tree back into the earth, absorbed into the earth, like, growing into something else and changing and always changing. So I just wanted to make that clear for the audience, but continue, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, we're still separating as a species. So, we can look at our world and life and politics and business, and the world seems so divided. Climate change and pollution, and there's a lot to be anxious or stressed about if you're not if you're not at peace or not connected to, in a fearless state, to the source of our being. But the consciousness is increasing. I mean, look at your show, and look at the explosion of yoga, and you could, consciousness of equality, women's equality, and in business, or there's so much evidence out there. Even Subaru calling one of their vehicles love or whatever.
I didn't know that.
I mean,
that.
This consciousness is increasing, and I think we're I have some examples in the book that demonstrate where we might be on this journey, because nobody knows for sure. We're still in the summer of our existence. We are dominated by the mind, and therefore we are further separating, but we're getting really close to this apex. And that means for our species, naturally, we move into this uniting phase, and we move as a species into heart dominance. So that's extremely optimistic. But you also don't have to wait. We don't need to wait for that. We don't need to wait for the autumn of our life, when we naturally chill out and we finished, the hard work of our summer season, and waiting for a harvest. We don't have to wait for these times. We don't have to wait for our species to get to this dominant uniting phase of our existence. We can do the work, whether it's small practices or big practices. And again, from my personal experience, and really anybody else who has authentically traversed the path of expanded consciousness or spirituality, the benefits are immense, creates great personal power, and leaves us with love, kindness, and peace, and what I call unshakable bliss.
Yeah, and you can't get there without practicing. You can't get there without, from my experience, putting yourself in front of and with teachers that influence you, people that have positive influence on you, people that are more heartfelt, putting yourself in situations that you're able to feel more of that heart energy. And we're in this, like, I think that's one of the big what John and I keep doing with this show, and regardless whether we're talking about leadership, psychedelics, or emotions or something like that, we're just trying to kind of pull away all this mental veneer of this separating energy and this mind dominated, egoic driven way of that we're showing up and manifesting as people, as individuals, as well as a collective community. And we're just trying to kind of push this conversation what we're that we're having here, and helping people open their minds so they can kind of open their hearts and realize, like, that's why I'm so excited that we've had this conversation today, Dan, because it comes from that heart space. And it's actually, I don't know why, or maybe people, they don't, I have a sense that a lot of people kind of fear going into that space because it's not linear, it's not analytical, it's very creative, it's very intuitive, it's very weird, like once you kind of get into that space, like shit starts to show up. You're like, whoa, what's going on here? Because I just had that thought yesterday about that. Now it's showing up in my life. Someone actually put here in the comments, if you will, very early on, this is exactly what I just mentioned. She goes, shit.
Speaking my experience right now on purpose in the job role with the demands of traditional constructs of life, my hearing this is just another proof that God or the universe brings our needs.
There you go. So, and there it is. And I think we can kind of end here. Dan, if there's anything else that you'd like to kind of jump into, that'll help to kind of put a little bow on the beautiful package that we've kind of, I feel we're putting out to the world right now, please. Or we can have our closing practice or closing comments, or please tell us how to find us as well. So hit any one of those would be awesome.
I guess maybe I'd just like to end by saying, you can't get watermelon in April. Patience is really important. But like anything in life, don't give up.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Awesome. And if you feel like giving up, hey, reach out to us, reach out to Dan, or listen. Dan has a great YouTube, has a great YouTube channel called All One Aware. If you want to kind of check out and dive, deeper into his work, because you break down every chapter. Is that correct, Dan, or different aspects of the book? Yeah.
I present each chapter as an episode on YouTube. I think I've got about half of the book out there. And
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll make sure that link is in the show notes for our listeners to check it out later, or those who are watching on YouTube later. We'll make sure that link's in there. But Dan, as we start to wrap up and we get to the closing practice, if you will, we'd love to kick it over to you to lead us through that practice, if you'd feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. This might be a little different, but this is, I'd like to recite a poem that is extremely simple and is a demonstration of, I think, what expanding consciousness is all about, which is moving beyond the duality towards awareness of the singularity. So if we could just close our eyes, take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, and keep doing that. Sun, no sun. Sun, no sun. Sun, no sun. Sun, sun. Sun, no sun. Sun, no sun. Sun, no sun. Sun, sun, sun. Sun, no sun. Sun, no sun. Sun, no sun. Sun, 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 sun. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. I love that. That's it reminds me of what you used to say a long time ago to me. Remember to remember to remember.
I think it was remember not to forget to remember.
There you go.
All of this is within us already, and
It
it's
is.
just reacquainting ourselves with who we really are.
Yeah. And anyone out there listening, hey, thanks for showing up. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing this. But we all have this ability. Everybody has a heartfulness ability, and when you start connecting to that, you could really start to change your own life and literally change the world around you just by being appreciative, saying thank you, connecting, being kind to your neighbor, being kind to yourself is really where a lot of this starts, and really kind of listening to things that might sound a little weird in the beginning, but that's probably your first foot on the path calling you to take some action. So
that's right. Dan, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing everything that you've shared. Definitely, I know our audience benefited from it. I personally benefited from it. And for our audience, I want to thank you for tuning in live today or tuning in later on the recording via video or podcast. Please share this with whoever you think may need to hear it, may need to see it. That's friends, family, colleagues, whoever. And then join us next week where we'll be interviewing fellow former Navy SEAL William Branham on getting naked. And naked is an acronym. So tune in next week to find out more about what that's all about. So thank you all. Thank you, Dan. Until next time, we will say peace.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.